Hey, what's going on, guys? Yesterday, I've seen Dr. Pai's web scraping tutorial where he kind of scraped exactly the same site I've scraped recently, but the main difference is that he has shown uh, I don't know how to find a right word to describe this. He's shown, okay, let's just call it the right way of doing things. I personally believe that there is no absolutely right way of doing things, and things like best practices and mm, some suggested solutions on how to write the particular code or something. It all depends on the circumstances. It heavily depends on the circumstances. Well, at least regarding to my own experience in web scraping, in programming, in freelance, and in general. And this video is a bit unplanned, but I really want to make this little code review. This code review would be slightly different compared to those that I've done before on this channel, at least, because those code reviews were different because guys asked me to say like what's wrong maybe in their code and how I would have done that and so on. But in this case, it's not about criticism at all. It's more like about my reaction, where I really like the way how Dr. Pi did his job, basically. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about how cool Dr. Pi is. So he's really, this is so strong coding, and I just love the what was there at the very end. So what he ended up with. So man, if you're watching this, this kind of video is dedicated for you, and this is my tribute to you, man. So I just, if you want to know what do I think about your tutorial, it's just fucking awesome. I really love it so much. So for all the others, well, for those who didn't understand who I was talking to, I was talking to Dr. Pi. Okay, so for all the others, let me just quickly demonstrate the GitHub repo regarding this tutorial. So a couple of days ago, I've written Bahrain real estate property scraper, and Dr. Pi did basically the same, and he did write the code from scratch, and eventually the code he has written was very similar. And when I see like his style of naming this packages and commentary style and like the overall layout, when I'm looking at this code, it's almost like I'm looking at my own code, basically. And this is very flattering. What's the most oh man, you oh, please, I can offer something back. Man, you can offer even more than you could have ever imagined. So yeah, Dr. Pi is always here with us. Okay, so what I want to say here, in one word, just to say this in one word, this kind of Dr. Pi's tutorial is a web scraping tutorial with the best practices and better English compared to what I'm doing, actually. And I would definitely leave the link in the description below this video, so you definitely should have checked this out, because this might fit your own views of life, of programming, of web scraping, whatever, because this is kind of more like position, more it's encountered more often compared to what I'm doing, because what I'm doing, even though it's pretty trivial, but still it's really specific to me in particular, to how I live my life, to how I work as a freelancer. It's not really the casual way of doing things, and it's I guess from the perspective of kind of trying to help. I don't want to say the word teach others, but from the perspective of trying to help others, trying to share my knowledge and experience. It's kind of it's a con, not the pro. So let's get back to Dr. Pi's code, and all this, like I was already mentioning, like the commentary style and the code layout is just fantastic. So the very first the thing to consider that DuctPy is using XPath instead of CSS. So XPath selectors is more kind of professional way of doing things, and there are several reasons for this. First of all, I'm not 100% sure, but it seems, I feel like if memory kind of serves me correctly, that's somewhere in the scrapy documentation there was a line claiming that CSS selectors in scrapy are implicitly converted to the XPath. So by using XPath directly, it's just simply faster compared to if you're just using the CSS. I don't really remember if this is really true. Maybe this is something in my mind. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I invented this on my own. But I truly believe that I read that somewhere. I read about this somewhere in the scrapy documentation. So XPath is really cool. I don't know, like I don't know why I don't use it. You know, like probably because I wish I could say that I'm not using XPath due to requests and beautiful soup background web scraping, but it's not the true again, because literally I've started with scraping initially, and I've learned requests and beautiful soup for about, I don't know, more than half a year after starting working with scrapy basically. So I actually, to be honest, I've never used requests and beautiful soup in my real world projects. I used only scrapy, and you know, like for some reason I love those CSS selectors, and you know, like I feel like I'm doing the same regardless of framework. So if that's the beautiful soup, I'm using CSS. If this is scrapy, I'm using CSS as well. So I'm kind of doing literally the same regardless of framework. So that's what I wanted to say basically. So XPath is really XPath is a language itself, for those of you who didn't know. So it's quite interesting. At some point it looks like regular expressions. Of course it's completely different, but you know, like regular expressions is a language itself also, and XPath is also a language. Well, I guess we can't say the same regarding the CSS selectors, because they just kind of extension for the HTML parser. Well, from the technical point of view, at least, how it is within my own understanding. So let's move on now. I don't remember. So yeah, all this URL join stuff. So it's also what I was doing, just the bare string concatenation and DuctPy is using URL join, which is just kind of better way of doing things. I'm not sure regarding string query parameters, if any here. Probably none of them. I'm not sure if he's scraping pages recursively over in here. Yeah, I'm not really sure. Next page reference. Oh, he's getting. It seems like he's getting the next page link from this pagination layout in the bottom of the page on the target side. He's scraping. Well, it's not always possible, but this is much better compared to what I did. I don't remember. Probably I was calculating the number of total pages, and that was too complicated. So the less code you write, the more efficient it is, the better, basically. So again, one big bolt plus to DuctPy. And the most ever kind of like visit card of DuctPy is using this. Oh my god! I guess it's called the item exporters, right? And he uses also input and output processors, if I'm not mistaken. So here, I guess he just imports. Yeah, item loader, yeah, from scrapy loader, yeah, and he imports the item from the specific file that we'll take a look just right in the moment. So let me just duplicate this page and open the items.py here. Okay, so here is the item class px item, which inherits from scrapy item. So the vast majority of the fills are just the bare scrapy fills. So this is just as if, like, you could have used the Python dictionary, as I'm doing usually in my scrapy tutorials and web scraping tutorials in general. And here is the difference. So he's processing the price. I'm not really I didn't dive that deep into this code, to be honest, but so he does, like, scrapy documentation suggests people to do, basically. So processing the input within this item processor using the input and output processor respectively. So for me personally, when I first encountered all this vast majority of scrapy, kind of some specific tools that you could have used along the way, and when I first started reading scrapy documentation, it was for about a year ago, probably in May, like just right now. And I was completely overwhelmed by the amount of information I was reading from there. And if anybody could ever explain me 1 year ago what all this stuff was needed for, I would be happy. So what I can do at least is actually trying to explain you guys now what is this all about. I'm not going to be covering all the possible topics, but here in particular, I just want to trying to explain what's the difference between using this items.py file over here and creating the scrapy item and creating the class that would inherit from the scrapy item and using this input out and output processors versus just the bare parsing within the parse method. So it's all about the scrapy framework philosophy, and framework philosophy that is written in a particular programming language is not always about it doesn't always go the same way as the language philosophy goes. So if you're aware of what is known as Python Zen, so if you just open the Python interpreter and just import this and hit enter, you'll see the list of for about 9 or 10 list items that describe the principles of how to write code in Python, like things like beautiful is better than ugly, simple is better than I don't know, hard or difficult is better than complicated, and so on. So try to write the code. Readability matters. Oh, okay, guys. Just instead of talking this shit, let me just try to invoke the Python interpreter and just say import this and read this to you. Okay, so Python Zen here. Beautiful is better than ugly. So, like, everybody everybody's free to interpret this on his own, basically. So how I understand this, beautiful is better than ugly. It regards the code layout. So all of this indentations that are fixed in Python. So you can get the indentation error if the code is not on its level of indentation, things like that. Then explicit is better than explicit. So how I personally can kind of like show this in the practice, you see this self argument that is taken by the parse function. So this is the self instance, and Python, I'm not sure if this is the only language that uses the self instance explicitly, so it's explicitly shown within the method when it takes some arguments. maybe some other languages uses this kind of technique as well, but I've never seen any programming languages but Python that does this. So this is the exact example of being explicit versus being implicit. So the self instance is passed just right within the response object. So this is the Python specific. So if say this was like, I don't know, Ruby or some other language, so you would just have like that parse response and that's it without the self instance. So this regards the explicitity of Python code. And simple is better than complex. So like the more simple code you write, the better. Well, it doesn't only refer Python, but many other programming languages as well. Complex is better than complicated, just what I was mentioning, like it's better to join some little parts into some complexity rather than just making this complicated from scratch. So like if you can break down the entire piece of whatever into little small parts and you can understand those little small parts, that's just really nice, because yeah, like it makes simple to understand each particular part and separate. Flat is better than nested. It's literally the same as above, but just with the difference that it regards like the function structure and things like that. Sparse is better than dense. Literally the same again. Readability counts, or readability matters, is what I was mentioning already. It's more like about the code layout. Special cases aren't special enough to break the rules, and this is just a brilliancy. It's just self-explanatory, nothing to comment here. Although practicality beats purity, and this is yet another point which actually is the reason why I'm recording this video. like what Dr. Pi did, I would say this is purity. It's just the best practice, like how they're supposed to do this, and how they suggest to do things in the documentations, like the best practices. So it's always some space to improve, but still. But on the same time, but on the same hand, you can say like practicality beats purity, because when you're doing something like on the real world projects, when you have real world clients and the real world tasks and the real world deadlines and all the real world stuff, basically, in this case it's more about writing something practical instead of pure. And it's not good that this practicality beats the purity. Okay, I'm sorry, just been slightly distracted. So that's what I was talking about. So when you're doing something real world related, in this case, unfortunately, it's not that perfect as it is in theory. Okay. Errors should never pass silently, and this is another way to say that explicit is better than implicit in regards to error handling. Absolutely brilliant phrase. Unless explicitly silenced. Well, that's the exception when like it's again like self-explanatory. In the face of ambiguity, refuse the temptation to guess. No comments, just yet another perfect brilliancy here. There should be one, and preferably only one obvious way to do it. And this is yet another reason why I'm recording this video, because what I was trying to say basically, and yeah, the rain starts, and this starts to be a good tradition, by the way. During recording my videos, at least. I said lots of words already, but what I just wanted to, what kind of thought I wanted to deliver to you guys, that it's not even my opinion, but it's kind of general opinion, that scrapy is not really that Pythonic. And being Pythonic, it means like kind of to follow this guidelines presented within the Python Zen list of quotes, basically. So I'm just thinking maybe I need to shift my computer slightly a bit to the right in order to avoid it getting wet because of the rain. Okay, so and here it is. You know, like one scraper, right? Exactly the same data is returned at the very end eventually. But there are at least two ways of doing this. So Ductipy considered this way, I considered another way. It's not about that who is right and who is wrong. It's about that scrapy is not really that Pythonic, believe it or not. And to be honest, they don't argue on this as well. So you know, like if you compare it with the web frameworks, you know, like there are two major web frameworks in Python. It's Django and Flask. And you know, like somewhere I read that scrapy is really similar to Django in its philosophy and structure. So and Django is not considered to be that Pythonic as Flask due to kind of violating really some kind of items within this Python's end list. So say like here in particular we have already two ways of how to do this, and it's not really that Pythonic, because yeah, if this was Pythonic there would be only one way of how to do this, although that way may not be obvious at first unless you're Dutch. And this is some humor specific to those who wrote this probably. I remember I was trying to Google this joke, and I remember I was laughing at this, but at the moment I don't really remember what's the clue there, so just let's skip it. Now is better than never, and well, it's more like life experience rather than programming it, but still it's on the cards, obviously, although never is often better than right now. Yeah, if the implementation is hard to explain, it's a bad idea. If the implementation is easy to explain, it may be a good idea. Well, no comments, just a brilliancy. Namespaces are one honking great idea. Let's do more of those. So this is it, guys. Let me just kind of close this terminal. So just to summarize what I mentioned above is we're not living in a perfect world, and everybody does things on his own. And just in order to avoid some competitions, like whose code is better, or you know, like I hate being competitive in whatever area of the life. And you know, like I started making probably 3 or 4 times more money monthly when I stopped competing with other freelancers. I just left the Upwork and started to do the same stuff on YouTube. And here I'm not competing to anybody. I'm just getting the emails with job offers. That's kind of it. I'm just doing those job offers. And also I'm getting emails with the need help on web scraping. I'm just doing new videos that kind of, you know, like, oh my god, I forgot that word. That promote me as a Python developer specializing in web scraping, and that's kind of it. So the very last thing to consider is it all matters. So how in particular to write your code, what guidelines to follow, either those provided within the framework's documentation, or those you pick up somewhere else, or those that you came up with based on your own life and programming and freelancing experience. It's all the matter of what kind of code you're writing and who is your client, and the very main part is what's the format of your cooperation. So you know, like if you're working for a company, for a big company, regardless of if the format is a freelancing or you're just a regularly employed guy, or maybe you can work remotely. But if this is all about the company, I've been working for a couple of companies, and I didn't like that experience, to be honest, because there are too many limitations. They you know, like it's not enough for them that your code works. They want you to make your code in the proper way that they like, that fits their guidelines, and it all ends up that you need to violate your own principles, your own life principles, and I just feel like it's complete nonsense. If you're making money, then you definitely have to follow your guidelines. Otherwise, it's just slavery, and that's it. So it's really important to follow your own guidelines that actually brought you those jobs, that income, that experience, and things like that. So now, if we just would be talking in particular instead of this. Instead of spreading this vague understanding I've been doing so far, I would like to say that the way Dr. Pi writes code is more like a kind of cooperative way of doing things. So it's good when someone else is reading his code, if someone else is working with this code, and if the development is done not by the only person. And also, if this spider is not a standalone program but a part of a bigger project, say it's involved from the web application or things like that, or it's involved in some complicated machine learning, data processing pipelines. So all the things where many people involved, a big amount of code is kind of involved as well. So in that case, this kind of guidelines defined within the scrapy framework documentation becomes the best practices on the real deal. But what I'm doing, I'm working alone always. I'm not. I do work for a company, as already mentioned, but I didn't really like that experience. For me personally, it was bad in literally everything. So the income was less. Even though I didn't have, I did have the client interaction, but when you're having that interaction with another developers, it's a real pain. They want something from you, and it's all ends up that you're just trying to violate yourself without a big success, and just eventually getting quit out of there without much explanations. So if you're writing, if you're working with a client directly, if there are no other developers, if your code is literally doing what it is doing, to me personally, it has really lots of benefits. So the first benefit, you can control it basically. So it's kind of enough to, it's not that big, so you're losing the control out of that code. So you can simply take care of all the scripts you're running and know absolutely exactly which one is responsible for some particular part of the job that has to be done basically. So and so on and so on, because okay, just hold on a sec, guys. Okay, guys, sorry, just probably I gotta go now because the workers are working there in my territory, so just need to talk to them. Okay, so I will try to finish this big speech. So the way I code, the way I record my videos, the way I do, the way I live, the way I am, as Eminem said, it's all about who you are, where you come from, where you go into, and how exactly. So if you're working alone, if you're working with a client directly, if you're getting paid without those nasty aggregators like Upwork with those giant 20% service fees and things like that, so you just can get paid directly. That's much more profitable compared to using those aggregators. If you're taking your clients directly, using the implicit self-promotion rather than explicit one, like what I'm doing basically. So I'm not telling everybody like, guys, I'm the expert in web scraping, please hire me. I don't say that. I say I'm very busy, I have lots of job, and that's absolute truth. And I'm just getting in the mails, I'm getting the emails that starts with a phrase like, sir, could you please, if you have some time. and that's much better compared when you get in a job offer on Upwork when somebody says, okay, I got $50, and I will think even more if you fit this job or not. Maybe I will invite you to the job interview and all the disaster like that, because I really hate it so bad that just eventually quit Upwork, and that was one of the reasons basically. So also, like this, all this hourly paid stuff, you think like if you're getting $25 per hour, that's kind of much, but like it's all about the job's done. So eventually you're getting paid for the job that you've done, and all this hourly paid stuff, like in my particular case, I did for about 3-4 times less compared if I'm doing the fixed price projects at this moment in particular. So like if I say like the scraper costs like $100, I can make it for an hour, and that's it. And does that mean that my hour costs $100? Nobody would ever hire me for $100 at Upwork, but but with a fixed price policy, and here on YouTube, this is absolutely possible, because like people don't care how much your time costs. They care about the product they want to get in return, and there is some compromise maybe, like regarding the price. So how much are they ready to pay for the particular job for you to do actually. And actually they pay for the deliverable, not even for your job. They don't really care about your job. They just want the deliverable, they want it stable, and they want the support. That's one of the kind of main things probably, because what's my personal I don't know how to call this, so difference maybe. So my personal difference is I always propose the support, and if the client says like you want too much money, I say like you don't understand that this price involves the literally lifetime support, and I'm helping. Like if once I did write some code and somebody's still using this, I wouldn't be taking a new amount of money for that support. I will be doing that for free. I am doing that for free, because that was the part of the initial price. And for those who understand that, they kind of they become the long-term clients, because this really fits them, and that's something that you won't really ever find on Upwork. Well, maybe you will, but it's not the most case out there. So there it's more like trying to get money and just forget the client and never get back to him. That's the vast majority of the freelancers. They're working in this sort of manner. Well, okay guys, so I hope after this video it starts getting at least slightly a bit more clear regarding the difference between different approaches. Well, not only in web scraping, literally in whatever field of programming, whatever niche, but this web scraping is actually a good way to explain things, I guess. So it all depends on who you are, how you work, and so on and so on. And the last thing I would like to say is you don't really ever have to look like somebody else, because you're not somebody else. You are always on your own. And why I love Dr. Pai's code is because he has taken the bare structure of what I'm doing in literally all of my videos, and then he developed this structure on his own. So he did take the very gist of what I'm doing, and not by the way, not only in coding web scrapers, but in how to make the videos as well. So he started to talk and he started to code during recording his videos, and this is absolutely fantastic. And then he adds his fantastic video editing skills to that, and eventually he gets to even better product that I do, because it's just better. But again, it's not about being competitive. It's just about like who would be Dr. Pai's customers, who is he supposed to be working with, and how exactly what kind of format he's about to take basically, and what kind of format am I actually supposed to be following. And that's the very okay guys, sorry, just I needed to pay for the service I got. I don't have enough English words to describe what for. It's let's say it's about agriculture on my land here. Okay, so you know, like yeah, I was trying to end this video eventually. So the way you write your code is all about who you write this and in what kind of format you're doing this. And bearing this in mind, I want to wish all of you guys to find your own way of how to write the code and who to work for, which projects to work on. Just trying to pick up the projects that fit your personality, which is really important in my particular experience at least, and so on. So bearing all this kind of information in mind, I hope, I really hope that, just like Dr. Pi does, all those subscribers of this channels, and not only subscribers, but just the regular viewers as well, who is not yet, who didn't yet land a job in the industry and just wants to do that. So I hope you guys, I hope this kind of insights would help you to find your own way, find your own format, and live your own life. This is it for this video. I hope you learned something interesting out of it. So until the next time, and take care. Cheers.